They left me behind because I wasn't worthy. But when the chief officer saluted me and said, "Welcome aboard, Captain," their jaws hit the deck. Asterisk, asterisk, my name is Maya. And I guess I've always been the invisible one in my family. Not the oldest, not the youngest, not the golden child. Just the one who faded into the background while the rest of them sparkled in their own ways. Growing up in a family obsessed with appearances, social status, and perfect photos for Instagram, I didn't fit in. I was the weird one. The girl who loved the ocean more than parties. The one who sat on the porch with a journal and a telescope while my siblings shopped for designer brands and fought over selfies. My mum used to say I was born old. My dad? He just said I had no ambition. That they were wrong. I had ambition. They just couldn't see it, because it didn't come wrapped in glitter and hashtags. My ambition smelled like salt water and sounded like the low hum of engines pushing through the tide. I wanted to be at sea, not on a yacht drinking cocktails like my mother, but steering the ship, navigating, leading. I wanted to become a captain. Of course, when I told my parents that at 15, they laughed. A captain? My dad snorted over his wine glass. Of what? A fairy tale? My brother Tyler said I'd be lucky to get a job washing dishes in the cruise kitchen. And my sister Brooke, who was already a beauty pageant finalist by then, gave me her fake sweet smile and said, "Well, if you like boats, I'm sure someone will let you clean them." Yeah, that was my family, cruel, sugar-coated, and relentless. I didn't cry that night. I just walked to the edge of our backyard, sat by the little pond I used to pretend was the sea, and whispered to myself, "They don't have to believe in me. I believe in me." Still, even when you're tough, rejection from your own blood cuts deep. And it didn't stop there. Year after year, event after event, I was left out. Trips? They'd forget to tell me. Photo shoots? "Oh, we didn't think you'd want to come." Maya. Family reunions. I found out about those from cousins posting on Facebook afterward. So by the time I was 24, I had grown numb to their exclusion. I had learned how to live on my own, emotionally and physically. I moved out, supported myself through odd jobs and scholarships, and quietly enrolled in the Maritime Academy. It was the best decision of my life. While they posed in front of expensive restaurants and beaches, I was learning how to chart courses, command a crew, and navigate through storms. While they judged my low-class uniform, I was becoming something real, something powerful, something they never understand. Still, even after all those years apart, a small part of me always hoped they'd change. That maybe, just once, they'd include me. Maybe say, "Hey, Maya, we're going away together. Come with us." But of course, that didn't happen. One spring morning, I got a call from my sister Brooke out of nowhere. "Hey, just wanted to check in," she said, sugar dripping off every syllable. "How's your little boat thing going?" Little boat thing. My fingers clenched the phone tighter. I smiled anyway. "It's going well. I'm in my final phase of training." "Oh wow, that's cute," she replied, totally fake. "Anyway, we're just taking it easy this month. Nothing big going on. Just family stuff, you know." I knew. I could hear the ocean in the background. I heard Tyler laughing, and my mom ordering a daiquiri. They were already on the cruise. And they didn't even have the decency to lie well. After the call, I sat on my couch, staring at my maritime uniform on the hanger. And I cried. Not because I was surprised, but because it still hurt. No matter how many stripes I earned, how many certifications I passed, how strong I became. Their absence left a mark, but that night something changed in me. I wiped my tears. I stood up. I looked in the mirror. And I said out loud. Next time you see me, you'll have no choice but to see who I've become. I didn't know then that next time would come sooner than I ever imagined, or that when it came, I wouldn't just be part of their vacation. I'd be captaining it. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk after that call with Brooke, something shifted. I wasn't angry, at least not in the screaming, slamming door kind of way. No, it was quieter, sharper, like a knife made of ice. That night, I didn't scroll through their vacation photos or cry into a pillow. Instead, I spread out my course charts, ran my fingers over the edges, and opened the email I had saved for days. It was from the senior administrator of Pacific Star Cruises. Subject: Final training rotation assignment. Confirmed. I had been assigned to a real commercial cruise ship for my final command, shadowing a 3-month rotation where cadets learn under licensed captains, living and working aboard as junior officers. It was the moment I'd been working toward for years. And suddenly, it had meaning beyond just me. I was going to walk onto that ship, not as the forgotten daughter, but as a uniformed officer in training. It wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about honoring every single version of myself that they had ignored, dismissed, or mocked. I packed my bags with a new fire in my chest. My uniform hung in its clear bag, clean pressed, the 4 cadet stripes perfectly stitched onto my sleeves. My boots were polished. My hat was tucked gently into a box lined with navy blue velvet. I touched it with reverence. This wasn't just fabric and thread. It was everything. My alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. the next day. Departure day. My rotation was on the Ocean Valor, one of the flagship cruise liners in the Pacific Star Fleet. 3,000 passengers, a crew of over 1,200, and me. I arrived at the port early, hours before embarkation. The crew entry gate buzzed open as I scanned my ID, and the officer at the gate smiled. "Welcome aboard, Cadet Reyes," he said. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. The ship towered above me, pure steel and grace. It glistened like a floating city, kissed by sunlight and salt air. As I stepped onto the deck, the chief officer second in command greeted me personally. "Glad to have you, Reyes. Heard good things from your academy." He was kind, sharp-eyed, and no nonsense. The kind of leader who remembered your name, but expected you to earn your place. And I was ready. The next few days were a blur of schedules, inspections, drills, and protocols. We trained, we drilled, we reviewed emergency evacuations, crew hierarchies, and digital navigation systems. I was exhausted, and I loved every second of it. I kept my phone off. No social media, no texts. I didn't want to see their filtered photos or feel that sting of exclusion again. But on day 6, fate came calling anyway. I was in the officer mess hall eating a quick lunch when the chief officer walked in and announced, "We've had a last-minute change. Captain Moretti's wife just went into labor. He's flying home immediately. I'll be contacting HQ, but we'll need to assign someone for this voyage ASAP." My heart stopped. It was rare, incredibly rare for cadets to get command, even temporary. I wasn't expecting anything. But the chief officer kept looking at me. Then he said, "Reyes, walk with me." We stepped outside onto the upper deck. The sun beat down. The breeze smelled like freedom. "You've been doing good work," he said without looking at me. "I've seen your logs. You're sharp. You know this ship already." "Thank you, sir. The next voyage leaves tomorrow. It's short, 4 nights. Coastal tour. VIPs, families, nothing too complex. Normally, I'd assign a junior officer. But they're spread thin this month." I blinked. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying." He turned to face me. You're going to co-captain this voyage. I'll stay on board in oversight, but the deck is yours, Reyes. You'll lead briefing, manage crew rotations, and liaise with command staff. Your certification supports it. Ready to be addressed as captain? I swear my heart skipped 3 beats. Yes, sir, absolutely. And just like that, it was happening. I wasn't just going to be on the ship. I was going to lead it. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid in my bunk staring at the ceiling, clutching my pillow like it could ground me to the moment. Then, just before dawn, something told me to check the passenger manifest. I logged in. Searched the last name Cartwright, my mother's maiden name, and there they were. Cartwright Family Suite, Level 10. Brooke, Tyler, Mum, Dad. 4 names. 4 people who had lied to me, excluded me, and left me behind. And tomorrow, they were boarding my ship. My ship. I laughed. Out loud, not bitterly, not cruelly, but with a strange kind of peace. The kind of laugh that says, the universe really does have a wicked sense of humor. Asterisk. The next morning, I woke before the sun. I stood in front of the mirror in my cabin, wearing my full uniform for the first time, not as a cadet, not as a trainee, but as captain. White pressed jacket, gold-trimmed epaulets, name badge over my heart. Captain Maya Reyes. My hands were steady as I pinned it in place. Outside, the ship buzzed with quiet, controlled chaos. Crew members prepared embarkation. Luggage handlers moved in rhythm. Housekeeping rushed through final cabin checks. Everything operated like a precise, living system, and I was at the center of it. I walked up to the bridge, where the chief officer was waiting. "You look ready," he said. "I am." We reviewed final checks, and by 9 a.m., boarding had begun. Guests streamed through security and onto the ship, smiling, laughing, already snapping selfies. Kids tugged at their parents' arms. Retirees strolled hand in hand, excited for cocktails and coastal views. I stood near the reception area with the senior staff for first greetings. It was tradition for the captain to make an appearance. Not required but respected. I almost didn't do it. A part of me wanted to avoid them, to skip the moment, to stay hidden in the bridge and let them find out later. But that wasn't me anymore. Hadn't worked this hard to cower in the shadows of people who never believed in me. I earned this. Every title, every stripe, every moment of dignity. I stood tall. And then I saw them. First came Tyler, my older brother. Shirt half unbuttoned like he thought he was still in college. He didn't recognize me at first. He was too busy flirting with the girl behind the welcome desk. Then Brooke, perfectly styled in a white designer dress and beach hat, dragging a rose gold suitcase and scanning the room like a queen returning to her throne. Then, my parents. My mother, all pearls and posture. My father, still pretending to be younger than his age, pointing things out like he'd designed the ship himself. They walked together, laughing. Then, everything stopped, because the chief officer stepped beside me and in a deep, clear voice said, "Attention on deck. Captain Reyes has arrived." A few nearby crew members stood straighter. Some even saluted. Guests turned their heads. Camera flashes went off. And right in the middle of the crowd, 4 familiar faces froze. I watched the blood drain from Brooke's face. Tyler's jaw went slack. My mother blinked once, twice, then whispered something to my father. He squinted, tilted his head, then whispered, "Maya?" I smiled. Professional. Poised. Cold. "Welcome aboard the Ocean Valor," I said. My voice steady and loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm Captain Maya Reyes. Please enjoy your voyage." And then I turned, without waiting for a response, and walked away. straight into the bridge. Past the security cameras, past the whispers, and I let out the slowest, deepest breath I've ever breathed. They knew. They finally knew. They didn't leave me behind. They left behind the girl who used to need them, and I've become someone they couldn't ignore if they tried. I didn't see them again until that evening. The first night. Aboard was formal dinner night. Most guests dressed up and filled the elegant dining rooms, dining under chandeliers and ocean views. I wasn't scheduled to attend captains, often only show up at formal dinners once per voyage. But I made an exception. I entered the main dining hall just as the Marta D announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Captain Maya Reyes." A round of applause broke out. I walked between tables as guests smiled and waved. I shook hands, thanked them for joining us, asked how they were settling in, and then, table 27. There they were, my family, my mother, her wine glass frozen mid-air, my father staring like he'd seen a ghost, Tyler nervous laughter bubbling up, Brooke blinking like her contact lenses had betrayed her. "Good evening," I said, stopping beside their table. "Captain," the Marta D said, "this party is listed as the Cartwright family." "Of course it is," I replied. Then I turned to them. "Hope the accommodations are to your liking." My mother opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Tyler mumbled, We didn't know." I tilted my head. "You didn't know I was capable." My voice didn't crack. Not once. I nodded politely and smiled. "I'll let you enjoy your evening. Let the crew know if you need. Anything within policy, of course." And with that, I turned and walked away again. The crew later told me my family spent the next 2 hours whispering, barely touching their food. Brooke had tried to Google my name at the table. Tyler asked one of the servers if I was really in charge. And my mom, she just sat there, staring at her daughter in a uniform she never believed she'd earn. That night, I stood on the deck, alone, watching the coastline blur into stars. For once, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt victorious. **** the second day of the voyage started early, as most days at sea do. By 5:30 a.m., I was already on the bridge reviewing the ship's course and weather patterns with the navigation team. The sunrise stretched across the horizon, warm and golden, as if congratulating me for surviving. Day 1. Funny thing about leadership, it doesn't give you time to dwell. No matter how dramatic the day before was. Today demanded action, clarity, precision. I had a ship to run, and I did. I oversaw crew meetings, handled a minor mechanical inspection in Engine Room 2, and conducted the morning briefing with the deck supervisors. Every call I made, every instruction I gave, it felt natural, like I was born for this. Around mid-morning, I stopped by the cafe to grab a tea. A young girl, maybe 10 years old, in a sparkly backpack and sun hat, looked up from her blueberry muffin and gasped when she saw me. "Are you the captain?" she whispered, eyes wide. I smiled. "Yes, I am." Her jaw dropped. "But you're a girl." A few nearby adults chuckled softly, but I knelt down to her level and said gently, "That's right. Girls can be captains too." She grinned, like I'd just told her she could grow wings and fly. And just like that, the weight on my chest lifted. For all the tension with my family, that moment made everything worth it. But peace never lasts long when your past is cruising on the same deck as your present. Later that afternoon, I got word from security that my mother had requested to speak with me. I was in my office, reading a crew performance report when there was a knock. "Come in." My mother stepped in, still wearing her polished sandals and a blouse I recognized from one of her sponsored brand deals. Maya, she said softly. Captain Reyes, I corrected without looking up. She blinked, startled. Oh, of course. There was an awkward silence. Then she placed her hands on the chair opposite my desk. May I sit? I nodded once. She lowered herself slowly, her designer purse tucked tightly on her lap. She looked smaller somehow. Or maybe I just looked larger from this side of the desk. I wanted to say, we didn't know, she started, that you were on this ship, or that you'd made it this far. I closed the folder in front of me. You didn't care to know. She flinched, like the words slapped her. I suppose we made some mistakes, she said, her voice trying to soften. You always had these unusual interests. We didn't understand them. Sailing, boats, uniforms, it didn't seem practical. Practical. I repeated slowly, letting the word hang. Unlike beauty pageants and social media followers. I didn't mean it like that. I folded my hands calmly. Then how did you mean it, Mom? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds a lot like you never saw me as valuable unless I looked like Brooke or acted like Tyler. That's not fair. No, I said firmly. What wasn't fair was being lied to about family trips. Or being called a disappointment at 17 for choosing a maritime college instead of law school. Or having to watch my family sail off while pretending I didn't care. Her lips tightened. We didn't know you'd take it so seriously. I stared at her. Did it ever occur to you that maybe, just maybe, I wanted to be taken seriously? Another pause. I thought she'd apologize, or cry, or say something meaningful. But all she managed was, your father thinks you're doing quite well now. I exhaled slowly. Of course, approval filtered through the lens of someone else's opinion. I have a meeting in 5 minutes, I said, rising. She stood, flustered. Well, we're proud, I think. I didn't reply, as she turned to leave, I added. Enjoy your vacation. Captain's cocktail hour is tomorrow evening if you'd like to attend. She hesitated at the door, then nodded without a word and disappeared. That evening, I walked the decks alone after dinner. The stars were vivid, scattered across the velvet. Sky like shattered glass. The ocean was calm. I wasn't. Some part of me had hoped her visit would be healing. Instead, it reopened wounds I thought had scarred over. But I reminded myself I wasn't here to fix the past, was here to honor who I'd become. The next morning brought new challenges. A minor storm system was forming offshore, and I had to decide whether to reroute or push through it. It was a delicate call, but ultimately mine to make. I gathered my officers and explained the situation. We adjusted the course, communicated transparently with passengers, and restructured the day's events. Guests barely noticed. The staff respected the swift leadership, and the ship moved forward, safe and steady. Later, as I stood on the bridge, watching the radar, the chief officer leaned beside me. You've got command in your blood, Reyes, he said quietly. Some people earn stripes and crumble. You wear yours like armor. I smiled, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. I guess some scars become steel, he chuckled. Well said. And just as he left the bridge, a message came through on the crew chat system. Deck 10, VIP suite. Passenger complaint room too cold. Name, Brooke Cartwright. I raised an eyebrow. Of course. Some people never change. I typed reply. Request acknowledged. Climate settings will be reviewed. Thank you for choosing Ocean Valor. Captain Reyes, no smiley face. No warmth. Just protocol, because that's all she ever saw me as, right? Cold. Well now. Cold was in control. Asterisk asterisk, the irony of Brooke complaining about the temperature wasn't lost on me. This was the same sister who, at 16, once forgot to pick me up from sailing lessons and told Mom it was because I chose the ocean over family. Now here she was, on my ship, demanding the climate settings be adjusted to suit her mood. Old habits die hard. Dispatched one of my stewards to her suite and asked him to be polite but brief. No special favors. No unnecessary small talk. She was a guest, nothing more. 5 minutes later, my communicator buzzed. Steward, Captain Reyes, Miss Cartwright has requested to see you personally, regarding her suite comfort level. Of course she did. I took a long sip of my lukewarm tea and replied, Inform Miss Cartwright that the captain is occupied with navigation protocol and will send a second officer to assist. That should have ended it. Except Brooke wasn't built to accept being ignored, especially not by the sister she once called the disappointment who didn't get invited to Coachella. By noon, she tried again, this time showing up at the lower level observation deck, where I was greeting a few curious passengers. She was dressed to kill heels, flowing cover-up, sunglasses pushed high into her hair like a tiara. Maya, she called, loud enough to turn heads. I turned slowly. Captain Reyes, I corrected, offering a neutral nod. She gave an exaggerated laugh. Oh, come on, don't be so formal. It's just me. Exactly, I thought. That's the problem. She stepped closer, fake smiling like we were at brunch and not in front of 20 guests and 3 crew members. I just wanted to say hi. You know, clear the air or whatever. I glanced at my watch. This area is reserved for guest tours until 12:30. If you have a service issue, please report it through reception. Her mouth twitched. I'm not a stranger, Maya, I turned toward my crew and began addressing a passenger's question about ship navigation, completely cutting her off with practiced grace. Brooke stood there for another few seconds, waiting for me to fold, to drop the act, to come crawling back into the role she liked best, the little sister who begged for attention. But I didn't, because I wasn't her little sister anymore. I was her captain. Later that evening was the cocktail hour, a formal gathering for upper-deck passengers and VIPs to mingle with crew leadership. Dress code, semi-formal, setting, Sky Lounge. It was my first one as acting captain, and I made sure everything was perfect. The lounge was bathed in gold light. A string quartet played softly. Appetizers floated across the room on trays. Glasses clinked. And the view? A canvas of ocean lit by the final blush of sunset. I wore my alternate dress, white sleek, authoritative, with gold-lined cuffs. Heads turned when I entered. Not because I was flashy or loud, but because I commanded the room. I made rounds, shook hands, accepted compliments, answered questions about the ship's route and security protocols. Everything was flowing smoothly. Them, of course. They arrived. The Cartwright family. My mother, dressed in a sparkling silver wrap that shimmered with every movement. My father, doing his best to act like this was his scene. Tyler, scrolling on his phone. And Brooke, in a deep red gown that left very little to the imagination. They were late, they were overdressed, and they were completely, hopelessly out of place. Brooke beelined straight toward me, the moment she saw me laughing with a retired naval officer from Melbourne. Captain Reyes, she said, overly formal, trying to be cute. Could I borrow you for just a moment? I excused myself from the conversation and followed her to a side window overlooking the water. She dropped the act fast. Okay, she hissed. What's going on? I tilted my head. With the ship? With you? This whole Ice Queen in uniform thing? Seriously? You're mad about a trip we took months ago? I blinked slowly. Do you know how many trips I was excluded from growing up, Brooke? Oh, my God, she groaned. That again? Yes, I said firmly. That? Again. And not just the trips. The birthdays I wasn't invited to. The group photos you cropped me out of. The times you told people I was adopted because I didn't look like you. You made me a ghost in my own family. She looked caught off guard. Like she hadn't expected me to have receipts. Or the spine to say them out loud. Maya, we're just kids. No, I cut in. You were cruel. And I stayed quiet because I thought one day you'd see me. One day you'd respect me. But you only respect people who can put you in your place. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice just enough. Well, guess what? This ship? This crew? This entire voyage? I'm in charge, you're a guest. And while I'll give you the same safety and service I give every passenger, you don't get anything more. Not anymore. She opened her mouth, closed it, then glared. You're unbelievable. No, I said with a calm, measured smile. I'm Captain Maya Reyes, and this conversation is over. I walked away back to the guests, the ones who respected me, the ones who didn't. Need to be convinced of my worth. As I turned, I saw Brooke still standing there, looking out at the dark water like she wasn't sure who she hated more, me or herself. That night, back in my quarters, I allowed myself one moment of reflection. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one sitting on a suitcase in the driveway, watching her family drive away on another vacation. I wished I could go back and whisper to her, don't worry, you'll get your view of the ocean. And when you do, you'll be the one steering the ship. Asterisk asterisk. By the third day of the voyage, the tension in the air was thicker than the humidity, rolling in from the coast. There was a storm forming on the radar, a real one this time. Tropical winds had shifted off schedule, and what was initially a mild squall now looked like it could push closer to our route if it kept gaining strength. Nothing severe, but enough to require strategy, calm, and leadership. All of which I had in abundance now. While passengers sipped cocktails and took pool selfies, my bridge crew and I studied forecasts, adjusted course coordinates, and prepped the crew for possible turbulence. And even in the middle of that very real pressure, I got a notification. VIP guest Brooke Cartwright is requesting a yoga mat and aromatherapy diffuser due to high emotional distress. I almost laughed, but instead, I flagged it, delegated it to guest services, and stayed focused. This was my job, my ship, my moment. By noon, I held a crew-wide safety briefing and announced minor itinerary adjustments due to the storm path. The announcement went out to all passengers, clear and calm. But 20 minutes later, I got the knock I was expecting. Security. Detail, stiff and slightly awkward. Captain, the Cartwright family has requested a private meeting to discuss the storm announcement. I sighed. Where? VIP lounge, deck 9. I walked in 5 minutes later. Clipboard in hand, uniform. Pristine, hair tied back in a tight bun. And there they were. My entire family. Sitting on a plush white sofa, like they were waiting for their Lauya. My father stood the moment I entered. Maya, thank you for coming. Captain Reyes, I corrected. Again. He gave a tight smile. Yes, of course, Captain. We wanted to voice some concerns. Go on. My mother cleared her throat delicately. We heard your storm announcement. Is this ship in danger? No, I said plainly. We're changing course slightly to maintain comfort and safety. It's routine. The storm is mild and will pass west of us. Tyler jumped in. Yeah, but I paid for a full day on the island tomorrow. Am I getting refunded if we don't dock? I looked at him blankly. As stated in our passenger agreement, Itinerary changes due to weather are non-refundable, but may result in alternative activities on board. You're welcome to review the policy. Come on, he interrupted. Don't act like you're a real captain now just because you've got the hat and attitude. My mother shot him a look, but the damage was done. I took a breath, a long, slow breath. Then I walked to the window and looked out at the sky. Grey, choppy, rolling in like memory. You know, I said quietly. The first time I ever felt powerful was the day I sailed a small cutter alone into a squall. Everyone said I was insane, but I studied the wind. I watched the waves. I didn't panic. I didn't run. I turned around. I made it out. That's how I passed my exam. That's why I earned this uniform. Not because of luck. Not because someone handed it to me. But because I kept going, even when no one believed in me. They were silent. No one looked me in the eye except Brooke, who finally muttered, "We didn't know you were serious about it." I tilted my head. No, you didn't care. You laughed. You left me behind. And I used every ounce of that silence to build something you never saw coming. My father folded his arms, stubborn. Look, I think we're all just a little surprised. You're not surprised, I said softly. You're embarrassed. That landed. No one responded. I clicked my pen and marked something on my clipboard. Suggest you all attend the Sunset Lecture on Maritime Safety. Might give you a better understanding of what it means to actually earn something. Then I turned and walked out, my boots echoing across the polished floor. Behind me, I didn't hear a single word. That night, the sea began to toss harder. Guests were instructed to stay indoors for a few hours. The wind howled. The waves slapped the hull. Most people were unbothered. They watched movies in their cabins or danced in the lower lounges. But at 10:47 p.m., I got a call to the main deck. Captain Reyes. Guest on deck 10 refusing to return to cabin. Says she needs fresh air for anxiety. I already knew who it was. When I arrived, Brooke was leaning against the railing, eyes wide and brimming with something between fear and pride. You're going to get hit with sea spray, I said calmly, stepping beside her. I like it, she muttered. Makes me feel something. I glanced at her. Mascara smudged. Nails chipped. The glamour was slipping. You've never been afraid of storms before. She laughed bitterly. That's because I always had someone else steering the boat. For once, I didn't reply. I just stood beside her, hands behind my back, letting her unravel in her own silence. After a while, she asked, How'd you do it? Do what? Keep going. After we shut you out, I took a breath, the salt wind stinging my cheeks. I stopped waiting for you to open the door, and I started building my own. She nodded slowly, and then, to my shock, she said, I'm sorry. Not a performance. Not a manipulation. A whisper of truth. I didn't realize how strong you were, she added. Until now. I let the moment sit there. I didn't accept it. Not yet. But I didn't reject it either. I simply said, Go inside. The wind's picking up. She hesitated, then obeyed. And as she walked away, I turned to the sea, my sea. I had weathered worse than this, and now, nothing could shake the foundation I'd built. The next morning, the ocean was calm again, as if the storm had never happened. That something in me had shifted. After 3 days aboard with my family, 3 days of awkward glances, hushed whispers, and stinging reminders of the past, I expected to feel drained, exhausted. Instead, I felt something strange, something like peace. Not because things had been resolved, but because I had stopped needing them to be. I no longer needed their approval, their inclusion, their words. I had my truth. I had earned this rank, this uniform, and every ounce of authority that came with it. And that was enough. Later that morning, I stood near the atrium, as guests prepared for disembarkation at our first port stop. It was a short shore excursion, just a coastal village with a local market. But most people were excited to get on land. As passengers lined up to leave the ship, I walked the deck, checking in with staff and security. That's when I heard it. From behind me measured, respectful footsteps. I turned, and for the first time since the voyage began, it wasn't Brooke approaching me. It was my father. He wore a collared shirt, and that look he always had when he was about to deliver a life lesson. "Captain Reyes," he greeted, with a strange, almost forced smile. I didn't speak. I waited. He cleared his throat. "I just wanted to say, this ship is impressive. The crew speaks highly of you. Thank you. And your mother? Well, she told me she spoke with you. She regrets a lot of things." I raised an eyebrow, but not enough to say them to my face. He flinched, barely, then said, "Maybe she's not there yet. Maybe none of us are. But I saw you on the bridge yesterday. Heard you give orders. Watched how the crew responds to you." He paused, and I realized we were wrong. I studied him for a moment. This wasn't the man he used to tell me to take makeup lessons from Brooke or to smile more, so I wouldn't look angry in family photos. This was someone smaller. Or maybe I was just taller now. "Why are you really here?" I asked. He looked out over the rail for a long time, then said, "Because you're my daughter, and I'm proud of you. Even if I didn't show it then. I see it now. It wasn't everything. It wasn't an apology. But it was something." He turned to leave, but I stopped him. "Dad?" He looked back. "Next time, if you want to be proud of someone, show up before the crowd does." He nodded slowly. "I'll try." I watched him disappear down the corridor, part of me stunned by how human he looked now. Like I wasn't the one who shrank anymore. Like I had become someone who made him feel small just by standing. Later that day, while passengers returned from their excursions, I stayed on the bridge, focused on planning our return route. The chief officer walked in with his signature calm grin. "You've made an impression," he said. I looked up. "How so?" "Well," he said, holding out a printed note. "Guest feedback forms came early. This one is interesting." I read it. "To whomever this concerns, Captain Maya Reyes turned this voyage into something unforgettable. I came on board thinking I was above everyone. I left knowing I had something to learn from my little sister. Please ensure she receives the recognition she deserves. She's not just a captain. She's a force." Brooke Cartwright. I didn't say anything for a long moment, just folded the paper and tucked it away. The chief officer nodded. "You handled this week with grace. Most people would have cracked under that kind of pressure. Family on board, emotional tension, and you never lost focus." I smiled softly. "Thank you." He stepped aside. "The next rotation's yours. We'll be announcing the transition tonight." I blinked. "You mean you're officially assigned to the Valor, commanding officer? Congratulations, Captain Reyes." That night, during the farewell gala, I stood on stage as the chief officer made the announcement in front of all the passengers and crew. Polite applause broke out. Some guests cheered. I caught a glimpse of my mother, tears in her eyes. She didn't approach me, not yet, but she clapped. And that alone said more than all her years of silence ever had. I stood at the podium and gave a brief speech. Was once told I didn't belong at sea, that I wasn't strong enough, that I didn't look like a captain. But the ocean doesn't care what you look like. It cares if you respect it, if you earn it, if you stay steady through the storms. I paused. And that's what I intend to do. Thank you all for trusting me to guide you safely forward. Applause again. This time louder. And in that moment, with the lights glowing, the crowd on their feet, and the ocean quietly lapping outside the ship, I realized something beautiful. I didn't need revenge. This was the revenge. Rising so high, they had to look up just to find me. Asterisk, asterisk. The final day of the voyage began with a calm sea and a quiet sunrise. But inside me, a storm had finally settled. Not a storm of anger, but of release. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like to confront my family. I used to fantasize about dramatic speeches, explosive fights, satisfying mic drop moments. But in the end, all I had to do was stand tall. Be exactly who they said I could never be. That was the greatest speech of all. Disembarkation was scheduled for the next morning, so the final day aboard was mostly leisure, spa packages, farewell lunches, sunset yoga. For me, it was a full day of meetings, final crew assessments, and route debriefs. Around noon, as I reviewed the handover report for the incoming first officer, there was a knock on my cabin door. "Come in," I said, not looking up. It was my mother. No pearls this time, no lipstick, just a plain cardigan and sandals, holding a small bag. "I wanted to give you this," she said quietly. I looked up, slowly, cautiously. She placed the bag on the desk and didn't sit. Inside was a framed photo I hadn't seen in years. Me, age 10, standing at the marina, hair in a messy braid, life vest crooked, holding a toy compass and smiling like the ocean had just whispered my name. "I found it in an old box," she said. "You used to carry that compass everywhere. I think that was the first time I saw you truly happy." I didn't speak. She continued. "I didn't understand it then. You weren't like the rest of us. You didn't want the same things. And instead of being proud of your strength, I tried to bend it into something prettier, something easier to explain to people." Her voice cracked. "And I'm sorry." My hands tightened around the edges of the photo. It had been years since she'd said anything that raw, that real. "I won't pretend it fixes things," she added quickly. "But I wanted you to know, I see it now. Who you are. What you've built. It's beautiful, Maya." I looked up, eyes meeting hers. "For years," I said. I wanted to hear that, begged for it in my own quiet way. "But now that I have it," I paused. "I realize I didn't need it to survive." She nodded slowly, lips trembling. "But maybe you deserved it anyway." A long pause, then I nodded back. "Yeah, I did." Asterisk, asterisk. That evening, the sun melted into the horizon for one last golden farewell. The crew gathered for final instructions. Guests packed their bags. As captain, I walked the decks one final time, thanking stewards, engineers, maintenance teams. It's easy to forget how many hands it takes to hold a floating city steady. As I walked past the lounge, I saw my family one last time, Brooke reading quietly, Dad looking out at the ocean, Tyler for once without his phone in his hand. None of them approached me, and I didn't approach them either. Because something between. You've had been said already, in glances, in silences, in gestures that meant more than words. They didn't need to hug me or post about me or call me baby sister again. They just needed to leave knowing I wasn't the one left behind. I was the one ahead. Disembarkation came with its usual chaos. Bags rolled. Kids cried. People scrambled to beat airport traffic. I stood on the upper deck, watching passengers leave. When my family finally stepped off the gangway, they all turned back, one by one. And for a split second, I saw it on their faces. Not guilt. Not regret. But respect. The kind you give to someone who's no longer just your daughter, but something more. A captain. Hours later, as the ship was prepped for the next voyage, the new passengers still boarding, I returned to my quarters and pulled out the old photo my mom had given me. Little Maya, bright-eyed, brave. I set it beside my brass compass and whispered, "We made it." And somewhere in the quiet hum of the engines, I swear I felt her smile back. Asterisk, asterisk. The following week was a blur. With the Cartwrights gone and a fresh set of passengers on board, life at sea returned to what it had always been for me: work, rhythm, purpose. The bridge became my sanctuary again, free from old ghosts. But something had changed. Not in the ship. In me. Before, I stood in uniform to prove something, to show the world and my family that I belonged, that I had earned it. Now, I wore the title like it was part of my skin, not for validation, but because it was simply who I was. Captain Maya Reyes. No asterisk, no apology. On the third day of the new voyage, I was invited to a maritime leadership summit on the upper deck, an informal gathering of senior officers across cruise lines who docked together at a nearby port. There were captains from Italy, Norway, Japan, men and women with decades of sea time. And they knew me by name. Not because of my family, not because of some viral moment, because of how I handled that last storm. Apparently, a few passengers, including one last name Cartwright, had written into the company, praising my leadership under pressure. I sipped espresso as a white-bearded captain from Oslo clapped me on the back. "You handled the weans like a war veteran," he said. I smiled. "The sea teaches you fast." "You ever think about going fleet-wide?" another captain asked. "HQ is watching. You've got the makings of a regional commander." It stunned me. Not because I didn't believe it, but because they did. There. I was once called invisible, excluded from family photos, told I wasn't dynamic enough for leadership, and now strangers from across oceans were handing me respect I never had to beg for. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine what came after this. Maybe I wouldn't just command a ship. Maybe I'd command several. That night, I stood alone on the upper deck under the stars. The new passengers laughed and danced below. Soft jazz floated through the air. Somewhere, glasses clinked and children giggled. But I was quiet. Content. I took out my communicator and opened the message I'd left unanswered for days. It was from Brooke. "Hey, I know I already said this, but I want to say it again. I'm sorry. Not just for the cruise or for excluding you, but for all the years before that. I didn't see you. And that's on me. You didn't need us to become amazing. But I hope someday we can rebuild something real. No rush. Just know I'm trying now. B." I stared at it for a while. Then typed, "Thanks for saying that. I'm still finding peace. But I hear you. And I hope you find your own compass too." I hit send. Not because she earned it, but because I had. Because forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means you stop letting the pain drive the ship. The next morning, I found a message in my cabin. A letter. Handwritten. Folded. Unfamiliar handwriting. It read, "Captain Reyes, I was a guest on your previous voyage. You likely don't remember me, just another mother trying to survive the chaos of family. But I watched you handle your crew, your ship, and your guests with a quiet strength I've never seen before. My daughter wants to be like you now. She bought a toy captain's hat in the gift shop and hasn't taken it off since. Thank you for showing her and me what a woman in command really looks like. Warmly, Danielle M. Cabin 706. I smiled, folded the letter, placed it in my drawer, right next to the photo from my mum. Two sides of the same coin. The past I had to rise from, and the future I was now shaping for girls who saw me and said, I can be that too. Later that day, I gave my daily noon announcement from the bridge. Good afternoon, guests. This is your captain speaking. We're cruising at a smooth 20 knots along the coastline with clear skies ahead. On behalf of the crew, thank you for sailing with us. And remember, sometimes, the best direction is the one you chart yourself. The line engineers clapped softly. One steward wiped a tear. I smiled, because they weren't just hearing a voice over the speaker. They were hearing a woman who had taken every insult, every door slammed in her face, every exclusion, and turned it into a destination. The final evening aboard the Ocean Valor was nothing short of magical. The sky was painted in hues of deep orange and purple, the sea calm and sparkling as if celebrating a victory of its own. Guests gathered on the upper deck, sipping champagne, laughing, sharing stories of the voyage. I stood quietly near the helm, watching the scene. It felt surreal. This moment, this ship, this life I had built from the ground up. For years, I had been the girl left behind, excluded, doubted, underestimated. But now, I was the one steering the course. My thoughts drifted back to the first day, the sting of rejection when my family left without me. How many nights I had spent dreaming of this moment, wishing for recognition, but I realized that true recognition wasn't about their approval. It was about my own resilience. My own strength. Suddenly, footsteps approached. It was Brooke. She stood beside me, quiet and sincere. I'm proud of you, Maya, she said softly. I smiled, the weight of years lifting just a little. Thank you, I replied. No more bitterness, no more need to prove. Just peace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I raised my glass to the endless sea. To new journeys. Breaking free from the past. Too. Commanding my own destiny. The ocean whispered promises of new horizons, and I was ready, not just as a captain of a ship, but as captain of my life. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment revenge so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching for? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy.